Last weekend laid host to the most important Disney Lorcana tournament to date. But it wasn't the only tournament to be held last weekend. There were a couple other events kind of around the world that we want to break down and just showcase that, hey, EUCC had its metagame, but there was also a bit of a different metagame kind of everywhere else. So, today's episode, we're going to break down all the other decks that you didn't see at EUCC. Let's get into it. The week 4 meta report showcases this breakdown today with 12 Amethyst Emerald, 11 Ruby Sapphire, 7 Ruby Amethyst, 7 Amethyst Steel, 4 Amber Steel, 3 Emerald Steel, and 2 Sapphire Steel. This week, Amethyst Emerald comes out big. Now, of course, the inclusion of this meta report does encompass the 5 decks from the top 16 of EUCC. So that was a big hit for Amethyst Emerald players. But Ruby Sapphire still right there, kind of neck and neck. Amber Steel taking a big dip down. Last week, Amber Steel was the most successful deck by a pretty large margin. Not this week, falls down all the way to 5. Amethyst Steel also hits a bounce back that was a little bit kind of weak last week, but this one comes in, finishes in 4th or tied for 3rd with Ruby Amethyst. A pretty stellar breakdown here with 7 different decks finding their way into top cuts this past weekend. Now, remember, if you want to see the video about the EUCC, it is right here. It'll be in the link in the description below. We covered the best decks from that event. We're not here to take away from them. We're not here to say, hey, they aren't the best decks of the week, but we already did a full video focus on that. So definitely check out this video if you're looking to check out the winner and the runner-up and the rest of the top 16 and things like that. Let's get into this week's breakdown. So the cool thing about the EUCC is that they had these revival tournaments. And what that was is if you didn't make it into the top 16 of the Continentals, they took all the players from day 1 and from 30 or from 17 all the way to 96 and you got qualified for this tournament. It also took the extra LCQ players. I don't know how many of them made it. It might have just been the players who lost in round 5, but it ended up being 105 players. This was the winning deck from the 105 player tournament. So just showcasing that Amethyst Emerald had a very, very good weekend. But this deck did pick up a new card that we aren't very familiar with, which is Prince Philip. 3 cost, inkable, 3 strength, 2 willpower, 2 lore, and ward. Just a very formidable way to kind of answer some of the more problematic cards within the metagame and saying, hey, I just need 2 lore to win the game. And this is going to be another card that gets around most board wipes with ward. The idea that we can dodge Sisu is pretty massive. Most decks are still favoring Sisu over Be Prepared. Not all of them, but there are a fair amount. So this is basically saying that once we get to a certain point in the game, if I put this card in play, I'm offering check to my opponent, which is important. It means they need to have specific Be Prepared or I'm going to be able to finish out the game. Adding Snake back into the deck is also another way to protect this character. It's also another way to gain more advantage with our goats, our rabbits, even our genies. Maybe we need to do more effective things with Crab. All of those things and more come from this. The one of Friends on the Other Side also kind of made me giggle. Just the random splash and saying, hey, I want it just a little bit more draw on average when I need to utilize a kit or a crab or a Peter Pan or even a fox to sing Friends on the Other Side. That's great. I'm only giving up 1 lore to draw 2 cards. Totally effective gameplay. This was also into a Clarabelle. We've now seen Clarabelle bounce in and out. It does feel like this is a particular core that is wondering if it wants Clarabelle or not. We've seen lists that were successful with it. We've seen lists that were successful without it. So Clarabelle seems to be one of those choice cards within the final additions to this list. As in this one, we see there are 0 big Ursulas. So that's probably another just kind of attributing way to alter this deck to how you like it best. All in all, huge shout out to Reclam here picking up the win in the 105 player tournament. Ruby Sapphire finished in 2nd place in that revival tournament played by Moyen. This particular list is a shark list. We've now seen some different successes through the weekend of whether or not we needed Maui Shark or not. This one comes in saying, yep, I want my Maui Sharks. I like them. I want to go do. The addition of 1 Develop Your Brain is great. Great Stone Dragon seems like a perfect card for this weekend. In general, I think Great Stone Dragon feels much better to being on that route rather than fishbone quill. You're always going to get something out of your fishbone quill on average, but it forces you to kind of go down on hand size, which isn't great in the current metagame. Great Stone Dragon just turns all of your characters that have already done their job into ink. Whether it's Tipo, Human Sisu, Grandma Tala, Maui, all of these cards, they come into play and they do something immediately. So you get their effect. And then the idea that later on in the game, you get to also turn them into ink, making your resourcing a little bit easier, a little bit safer. Maybe you don't have to ink every turn to get up to your Maleficence because you're able to utilize your characters again with a card like Greatstone Dragon. I also like the addition of a few more items in this list. We saw, yeah, in the EUCC event that there was only 4 popsicles. That was the only items in the top 16 players deck with 4 Hiram. So adding in just 6 more items in this list because of Vitalosphere, Ice Block, and then of course the Lucky Dime, along with these popsicles and Greatstone Dragon, I think just gives a little bit more consistency to Hiram, which I think is very important. Very often you are in the mirrors or you're in Ruby Amethyst matchups and you're kind of both starved for cards. So you need to find a way to make sure you are consistently getting them. Obviously, everything else about this list is pretty straightforward. Again, we see 3 Sisu here to be prepared, which is why those 3 stranded characters are so important in other lists, because you have to understand that, hey, my opponent likely has more Sisu than be prepared. So if I can put characters into play that beat Sisu, I'm going to be in a very good position. But all in all, second place finish here for Moyen. Congratulations on a pretty great way to follow up your EUCC run. This was a nice way to finish out the weekend, pick up a nice prize, I'm sure. Want to give a shout out here to Domingo. I messed up the name in the previous report. I truly am sorry. I really, straight up messed up on me. Had to give a great shout out. Picked up the EUCC win right here with Ruby Amethyst. If you want to hear the full breakdown of this, definitely check out the EUCC, the best X from EUCC, posted earlier in the week. But again, me to you, apologies, sure. Congratulations on a phenomenal win. This past weekend hosted PAX Unplugged. Garrick picked up multiple wins across 2 tournaments on the weekend. I believe it was Friday and Saturday, piloting Ruby Amethyst. This list is honestly very straightforward. There's nothing here that's too crazy. The EUCC list hosted Bell in the deck list. We don't have any of those. We just have a bunch of choices here out of our Ruby cards again. 3 Maui, 2 Lady Tremaines, 2 Medusa, 1 Sisu, and then 4 Brawl, 4 Be Prepared. And then our Amethyst cards are pretty lined up. I think that they're starting to showcase that this list is utilizing all of the Amethyst card draw to facilitate the Ruby removal as best as possible and giving yourself the most choice out of your Ruby removal cards. Still featuring Flynn Rider and Sisu, which is nice. It's just a great way that when you're on the play, you have the ability to put on the pressure and just gain a bunch of lore and kind of end the game much quicker. We've now seen Flynn Rider showing up in other lists as well. So it's not shocking to me here that Ruby Amethyst players are still very much interested in that lineup. At the end of the day, he is inkable. We can just get rid of him when he's bad, which is totally fine as well. All in all, Ruby Amethyst showcasing some strength again all over the globe this weekend, picking up 2 wins in the PAX Unplugged events, picking up the EUCC win, picking up a couple wins in other smaller tournaments. I really just wanted to give a showcase to PAX Unplugged and the tournaments that we were playing. So huge shout out to Garrick on this one. Sadly, the Forbidden Mountain family kind of lost someone near and dear to their heart. This is Joel. Joel was the father of AJ, who is a bit of Dick Burns' rival down in North Carolina. He's a 12-year-old player just getting into card games for the first time. Dick and him play every week at their locals. And this past weekend, there was a tragic loss to Joel. And yeah, it was really tough for us. We were sitting at dinner on Sunday night, just kind of recapping the weekend, kind of enjoying it. And then we got this really sad news and it's just awful. So, I had to share this story here and I'm going to put the GoFundMe page in the description below. If you're looking to help out an incredible family for the Disney Lorcana community, I've heard nothing but amazing things about Joel and everything he was doing for that Kingston, North Carolina, Lorcana atmosphere because his son loved this game. So if you want to give back, if you're interested in helping this family out during this just incredibly tough time, I'm going to leave that there. So thank you guys for anyone that does help with that. Amethyst Steel, played by Scott Landis, TFM Zone, picked up a playmat this weekend at PAX Unplugged, focusing on a bit more of a mid-rangey Amethyst Steel list. There are no docks here. We are very much going a bit top-heavy, but we're not going above the cost of 5. Bell makes another return. I think this is one of the cards that you're going to be seeing in almost every Amethyst list moving forward. It's just showcasing that the 5 cost Inkable 4/4 with 2 lore and her ability to move damage is very much a way to flip the Genie Wars. Amethyst Genie Wars are going to be probably just going on for just about ever moving forward. So it is notable that this card has the ability to kind of like flip that a little bit more, keep your Genie more secured, maybe even just pressuring down even further how important some of the play draw aspect is to the game, but it also is giving credence to the potential of on the draw play, being able to finish off opposing genies and elses and things like that with a couple tricks along the way. This deck still focuses around Smash. The action lineup of being 3 Smash, 4 friends on the other side, 4 and then along came Zeus is pretty much an interesting trade-off. We could make an argument that that should be a Strength of a Raging Fire, but it's not as easy to just keep characters on board to ever guarantee that we need 3 damage. And Smash always being 3 damage, but not being able to be sung is still playing a very relevant role. It removes a lot of the core of problem and threats to your path to victory, which is why I think the card still ends up seeing play. But there's also a world where maybe we can get rid of the card. Pete also seemed like a very awkward card on the weekend. There are matchups where it is very relevant, but it feels like he's mostly falling out of favor now because it's not as weak to cards like Be Prepared, just because you're not really ever slamming that many or going that wide on average. It's also not grab your swords metagame, so I don't really care about those things. So even a whole new world, this deck's not that upset if we get a whole new world. If we can draw 7 new cards, we might be in an okay position. So Pete just might be a card that, while it was very necessary in the past, it might not be this cornerstone card anymore for steel deck. So it could be a very removable card. I believe in the later events on the weekend, Scott ended up playing libraries over Pete. So that is a pretty good option for you as well. But all in all, this list played pretty well across several players of TFM this weekend that decided to try it. I think the deck is fun. I think it's great. I think it's another way to utilize the Amethyst core right now in Disney Lorcana and just try and splash in one of your more favorite ink combinations, or just playing some cards like Calhoun, Beast, Smee, Along Came Zeus, or all these just like really powerful steel cards that you can still utilize while playing the Amethyst core strategy. Frank Karsten had a phenomenal weekend this past weekend with Amber Steel Zimba songs. This was a deck that went 5-0-9 through 2 tournaments. So through EUCC and through the Revival tournament, Frank was able to finish in top 8 of that Revival tournament. And I really wanted to give a shout out to this list because when we're talking about the 2-game format and going across 14 rounds and not suffering a single 0-2 loss is telling me really that this list has a very large opportunity to being a force to be reckoned with within that metagame. Amber Steel has always been very, very efficient on the play. So playing games on the play, on average, your hands just are like unstoppable. So the idea that this list was able to do that and then still find ways and a lot of successful ways to win on the draw is very important. I think that there are some things here that, you really do like and really can see why it's effective. Having, the Cinderella shift is still very important right now. That 5/5 with 3 lore with resist too, there's just not a lot in the metagame that's competing with that card on average. Having the recur threat because of Lilo is pretty important here. Just having a way to close out the game later on, specifically when we can have Lilo, and then find ways to ready it with Zimba and things like that, and just threaten more of a core way to grind out a game to gain that additional reach of lore. Seeing Prince Naveen here is really nice. Still having the 4 Storm, 4 Strength of a Raging Fire, 3 Zeus, 4 Whole New World, and then the corner pieces of 1 World's Greatest Criminal Mind, 1 I'm Still Here. This is a list that we've been talking about kind of a bit over the last few weeks because we've seen Frank be successful in other tournaments and decks like this be successful in other tournaments. So you can see here again that this was just a good follow up, and it's just saying, hey, on the play, my deck seems like it can't lose, and I have the ability to pick up ways to win on the draw as well. Turn 1 Cinderella, turn 2 Ursa Vanessa, turn 3 into a Ariel and things like that really present lots of ways to threaten the game. Having Pete as a way to kind of securely keep your singers on the board for your setup turns while we still have the potential to have Shift Robin. We have shift Zimba even when necessary because of Future King. Lots of different ways to shift and sing a whole new world right away. I really like this list a bit. It's been very successful for Frank so far. So definitely a huge shout out to you and a great finish this weekend. Emerald Steel. So this was the only deck on the list that we didn't have more than we didn't have any Emerald Steels outside of EU Continental be successful. This was the second list. We covered the first list in the best decks from European Continentals in the last video. So this is the other list here. And if you're paying attention and you've been looking at this deck, well, you'll notice there's no Azurite Sea cards. This is just a very standard Shimmering Skies deck list that is great because this deck is that powerful. This player went into EU Continentals without registering a single card from set 6. And I said this last week on the report where just because there are new cards doesn't mean that you need new cards. And that is proof here. Top 16 of EU Continentals without a single brand new card from Azurite Sea because that's what this deck required. It didn't need Pluto. It didn't need Gogo. It didn't need Calhoun. Like, it didn't need any of those cards to be successful. This is it. This is living proof. So shout out to you on a top 16 finish, just showcasing to the world, like, just because we have new things doesn't mean that you need to. And really, what I'm saying here is don't fix what's not broken right here. Which brings us to the Amethyst list. That's right. You guys call it Blurple. I call it Amethyst. This is Sapphire, Amethyst. That is best. I really do enjoy this list. I think it's very interesting. The ramp effect from Tipo and Sail kind of just accelerating to some of these more big bomb characters like Elsa, Spirit of Winter, making a return. Belle, again, I don't know how many times I'm going to say it this weekend, guys. I think Belle is officially the standout star of the Azurite Sea metagame. Now that Amethyst is just being played in just about everything to success, Belle looks to be a card that's finding more and more homes in everything. I think now through the last 3 videos on here of showcasing deck lists, we've now seen Belle in Emerald Amethyst, Ruby Amethyst, Amethyst Sapphire, Amethyst Steel. Like, it's just everywhere. So just be weary of it. If you don't have this card yet, you should probably be picking it up. The rest of this list is pretty great though. The other cornerstone card is the Wasabi. So the Wasabi is a very interesting card. It's a 4-cost inkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore with 2 abilities. The first being Blades of Fury. When you play this character, you may banish chosen item. Its player gains 1 lore, and then quick reflexes. During your turn, this character gains evasive. So it is a 4-cost 3/3 with evasive on your turn to help you get rid of some problematic characters. It can, in theory, help you get rid of opposing genies due to your crabs and things like that, which is notable. It also has the ability to just come in and pop some items. If there's a problematic item in play, we can remove it, keep our opponent from winning with lucky dimes and things like that, or just removing fishbone quills or greatstone dragons. I will say that I think this list needs a greatstone dragon of its own. Utilizing the formidable draw from Library Friends on the other side and Finders Keepers is great. We know, obviously, we do have the Genie and Rabbit package with Foxes and Snakes and Diablos, of course, in Chernobog, and there's ways to kind of fine comb through your list. But having a another way to effectively draw cards would be pretty nice. But since Greatstone Dragon does kind of effectively draw cards similar to all these, where it just says, "Hey, I get to ink out of my inkwell this turn," I think that's pretty important for this list. So I would definitely find a way to put one of, if not two of them, in here for sure. Baymax making a nice little appearance here. This is a pretty good card for this list and things like that, because honestly, this deck has a bunch of big butts. So it has a lot of cards that stick around. So utilizing Baymax and Bell to gain additional lore or remove additional characters, I think are two very, very formidable ways to win. I think this list really is close. I think we're going to find more and more players playing decks like this moving forward and showcasing that Amethyst is just that good, and you really have the ability to splash in whatever ink combination you would like to be successful with it. So there you have it, guys. The quick one this week. Really nice metagame breakdown, because in honesty, it's just showcasing that there is a lot of choice and versatility within this Disney Lorcana metagame. Some players love it, some players hate it. I'd love to know where you're at in the comments below, actually. Do you like the idea that the metagame is so diverse? Does it make it, nice to say I can play whatever I want this week and be successful? Or on the other, are you on the other side where you're like, it's very difficult planning for this, because maybe you're the type of player that likes knowing that, okay, the best decks are these three best decks, and I can just build my deck to compete with that as best as possible. And then you fall short because you end up playing like the fourth and fifth deck. I'd love to know. I'm very indifferent in all honesty. I like the ability for players to be able to play decks that they enjoy and be successful playing them. This past weekend at PAX Unplugged, it was a real showcase of saying, hey, everyone that's there and everyone that can play can show up and have the ability to win a prize. Like these playmats, they gave out, I don't know, like 5 or 6 of these a tournament, because the way the tournament broke down into, you only needed to be 3-0 to win one of the playmats, but it showcased that a lot of players can come in. Ruby Amethyst was successful, Ruby Sapphire, Amethyst Emerald, Sapphire Steel, Blurple won a 3-0, Amethyst Steel. Like there were 6 different decks right there that I know of for sure that was able to be successful in a tournament and win a prize that people really wanted. So I like that part of the game, but it's also like, hey, even me, as I'm planning for LCQs, it can be difficult, or I'm planning for CCS this weekend. Don't forget to check them out on Lore 20 Pro. I believe they're streaming the entire tournament. 5 of the Forbidden Mountain are heading down. So uh, this is one of those things where like planning for this weekend is difficult, because there are so many good decks that metagame is so wide that you can't just pinpoint one or two. Like, yes, we can say, okay, Ruby Sapphire was the most played deck in EUCC. Ruby Amethyst won the event, and Amethyst Emerald was the most successful conversion rate for the deck. So you can say that maybe those are the 3 best decks in the game, and you can target those 3 decks, which leaves out all the steel decks. So if you only target those 3 decks and you ignore steel, you might sit down against a steel opponent, and it might not be a very good day for you. So that's why I think it is difficult. I'd love to know in the comments below. Do you like this metagame? Do you dislike this metagame? Why? I think it's really important to note. All in all, if you are looking to hear even more in depth about my honest feelings about some of the decks in this and some of the metagame moving forward, this ultimate meta guide will be here. Right now, it's still a work in progress. There are still things to be added. It's all defined. Everything's laid out, and you'll be able to see it from day one, from the moment you purchase this, on how I'm going to be presenting this through the next few weeks, or actually all the way until the end of set championships. But right now, it's in there. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great use of your ability to predict your own metagames as well. That's the whole purpose for me for this, is to take everything that I do every week and add it even more layers on top. If that's what you're interested in, if you're looking for the most information as possible, this guide will be for you. Please check it out in the pinned comments below. Again, anyone that's able to donate for Joel's fundraiser, huge, for me to you. Also, anyone, I do mean this, in below, you can see our shops and buy our merchandise. Anyone that buys any single shirt from us, any piece of merchandise in the month of December, we are going to donate all of that proceeds straight to Joel's fundraiser. So anyone that does any of those purchases, know that this is the perfect month to do it, because you're going to pick up a piece of gear, support us, but then we're going to take all that money and we are just going to add it into the fundraiser and things like that. We also have something special coming up, probably sometime next week, to help also fundraise for that event. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure you hit the like button for me, share with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we do the Meta Report every single week. This weekend, we're heading to Charlie's Selectable Show in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I'm going to be there, my first time ever being there. 145 players already registered for the tournament. I'll be reporting on that tournament next week. Thank you guys so much for watching today. We'll see you in the next video.